Part 4 of the Newbottle Waggonway continues the route from Grindon Hill up to the Arch Engine and Ettrick's house. The 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map shows this part of the route between wayleave points Z and continuing from A up to P. After passing the foot of Grindon Hill, the Newbottle Waggonway continues the route marked as the Philadelphia Old Waggonway on an early OS map. An 1830 Robson map shows the point where the Newbottle Waggonway was joined by the later Lambton Waggonway after 1822. This is marked as intended line of railway on the Robson map. The Lambton Waggonway replaced the Newbottle Waggonway up to the Staiths on the River Wear after this intersecting point. The 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map is now investigated between wayleave points Z to C marked on the map. Field boundaries indicate a close correlation of wayleave points Z to C between the 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map and the early NLS Ordnance Survey map. The wayleave and Ordnance Survey distances between points Z and C match exactly, confirming the alignment between the 1817 Newbottle Waggonway hand-drawn map and the early 1840s OS map. The additional approximate grid references could now be established for wayleave points A to C. Grindon Mill is a point of interest on the junction of Chester Road and Grindon Lane, as shown on the 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map near to wayleave point C. The mill is soon replaced by a public house, as shown on the right-hand early OS map. The following images show the Grindon Mill pub before and after it closed in 2021. The 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map is next investigated between the wayleave points C to F. Field boundaries again show a close correlation between the 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map and the early Ordnance Survey map for wayleave points C to F. The wayleave distances also transfer and match closely to measured distances on the early Ordnance Survey map between points C and F. The additional approximate grid references for wayleave points E and F could now be established. An enhanced photo from the 1930s shows how the Newbottle and Lambton Waggonways intersected near to Grindon Close House, which later became a library and museum. The next part of the Newbottle Waggonway route to be investigated is between wayleave points F and G. Wayleave points F and G are able to be fixed on the early OS map using a similar correlation of field boundaries with the 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map. It is further encouraging that the wayleave distances between points F to H match exactly with their equivalent points on the early OS map. The approximate grid references for wayleave points G and H could now be established. A stone bridge at this location is shown on the 1817 Newbottle Waggonway map. This drawing shows a typical construction for a turnpike bridge from the same period, which could have been used for the bridge carrying the waggonway over Chester Road. An 1895 OS map shows how the bridge carrying the now Lambton Waggonway over Chester Road had disappeared by this time. The Newbottle Waggonway map is now investigated between wayleave points H to L. Field boundaries are again a good visual method for transferring wayleave points H to L from the Newbottle 1817 Waggonway map to an early OS map. The wayleave distances recorded on the Newbottle Waggonway 1817 map for points H to L are transferred to the early OS map. There are just a couple of minor points for discussion and future research. Wayleave point K, using the field boundaries and entrance building to the large property, marks a good reference between the Waggonway and the OS map. A painting by the local Sunderland artist A.J. Moore, dated 1901, shows the house at High Barnes, rebuilt after 1845 and which became a home for the aged. Wayleave reference point I has two possibilities when the measurement distances are transferred to the early OS map. One reason could be that the arch engine was a later addition after the Newbottle 1817 Waggonway map was drawn. The approximate grid references for wayleave points I and K could now be established. An 1830 Robson parish map shows the Newbottle Waggonway running past William Ettrick's house at High Barnes. The arch and Glebe stationary winding engines were operating at this time. An 1856 OS map shows the arch engine still in use. By 1895, the Lambton line and arch engine had now been removed. A 1914 OS map shows a pumping station now at this location. The following photos show the pumping station, which would have supplied a reliable source of clean water for the housing needs of the rapidly expanding local industrial and domestic demand. A residential property has replaced the pumping station, but a post located next to the pumping station and shown in the last photo still remains. By 1938, the new Chester Road had been constructed. The next part of the Newbottle Waggonway route to be investigated is between wayleave points L and P. Field boundaries again provide a good correlation for transferring wayleave points L to P between the Waggonway map and the OS map. The wayleave distances are transferred to the early OS map and match closely with the field boundaries except for two small inconsistencies. The wayleave point L has two possible locations on the right-hand OS map due to the staggered field boundary, most likely due to the later construction and opening of Bishop Wearmouth Cemetery in 1856. The 1817 Waggonway map has no specified distance between points O and P. As shown previously, the wayleave distances between points L and P aligned closely between the 1817 and the OS map. The approximate grid references for wayleave points between L and P could now be established. An approximate 3D route for the Newbottle Waggonway can now be shown between Grindon Hill and the Sunderland Royal Hospital. The approximate route of the Newbottle Waggonway and walking route between Grindon Hill and the Sunderland Royal Hospital are now plotted on the latest digitised version of Ordnance Survey maps. Part 4 of the walking route starts at Grindon Hill and continues until it reaches the first point of interest, where the walking route crosses the approximate route of the waggonway. The walk continues until it reaches the next crossing point on Chester Road and High Barnes. After crossing Chester Road and passing the location of the Arch Engine, the walk next reaches the main entrance to Bishop Wearmouth Cemetery. Just inside the entrance can be seen the remains of one of the arches of a turnpike bridge crossing, which would have carried the Newbottle Waggonway on its route to the Staiths at the River Wear. An enhanced photo shows the bridge before it was demolished sometime around the 1960s. A line of trees at this location follows the approximate route of the Newbottle Waggonway through Bishop Wearmouth Cemetery before it reaches a housing estate. The walking route continues until it reaches the finish of Part 4 at the Sunderland Royal Hospital. An unmarked sculpture representing the location of the Glebe Engine on the route of the Newbottle Waggonway ends part 4 of the walking route. An artist's impression shows how the sculpture should have been, but only a capped well represents this important part of the waggonway. The final part of the Newbottle Waggonway route continues on from the site of the Glebe Engine until it reaches the Staiths on the River Wear.